Hello everyone, welcome to Zentangle Project Pack number 10. Wow, time flies. My name is Molly Hollaball and I will be teaching a portion of this new series that we are calling Zentangle Legend. To learn more about Zentangle Legend, we encourage you all to watch the Project Pack 10 intro video, and that will give you a little bit of background and some foundational information to get you going on all of the other videos that go with the Project Pack 10 series. We're going to be using today a custom booklet that comes with the Project Pack 10 supply kit. And if you don't have this booklet, we do always encourage folks to get creative and use whatever materials that they have on hand or that they can find. But if you are interested in purchasing a Project Pack 10, they are available from certified Zentangle teachers in a number of countries and also here at zentangle.com. So this booklet is custom made for the Legend project. And we're going to continue to tell you that this is your booklet, and even though we're going to be making suggestions and doing little tutorials and setting up different scenarios, we encourage you to really make this booklet your own and to make choices based on what you want your booklet to look like. So you don't have to do every single tangle that we do. You might supplement in something that makes more sense for you. So have fun with it, make it your own, explore, take chances, and we're going to have a good time. So that being said, I am going to be working today from the booklet on page, let's see, I had it marked off here, L10. And I like to sort of press down the seam of the booklet just to make it lay a little bit flatter before I get started. So each template here has 20 spaces, and we talk about this more in the intro part, to go along with the system of using the icosahedron. And so each one of us are teaching a theme. And my theme today is going to be playing with two contrasting types of tangles. So I'm going to fill my 20 spaces with half drama tangles and half what we call texturing tangles or fine line tangles, and playing around with how those two tangles really complement each other in a composition. So going to this template, you would know that you're going to get a little bit of each to set up some sort of cool composition. So for this tutorial's purpose, I'm going to just fill one side here, and then I'm going to leave you guys to pick your own to do with the other side. And then I'll show you an example of a finished one at the end. For the tools that I'm using, I have a brown 01, I have a black 01, and then I have a graphite pencil and a tortillon. So keeping it fairly simple. I'm going to start off using just the brown 01, and I'm going to use this to do all of my texturing tangles. So I purposely picked some tangles that I thought I might be able to pull up some legend stories with. So I'm going to start with a tangle here that actually matches up for when I came to Zentangle. And I remember this tangle because it was a tangle that came about at one of the first certified Zentangle teacher trainings that we had here in Massachusetts. And this tangle is called Munchen. And Munchen is what we called my daughter before she was born, when she was in my belly. And we didn't have a name for her, and we didn't even know she was a girl. And so we would just call her the Munchen, and I don't even know why. And so I, at the same time, was sort of on my Zentangle journey. I was pregnant and waiting for my first baby, and I was doing a lot of tangling, and Rick had showed me this new tangle called Paradox, and I could not for the life of me get it. Like, I just wasn't clicking. My brain wasn't going there. And so I decided I was just going to do a modified form of it. And this is what came from it. And we decided to call it Munchen. And so that's where Munchen came from. So I'm going to put texturing tangles in these little kind of pointy spaces here. And Munchen, I think, it can be a texturing tangle or not. And the way I'm going to draw it today is I'm going to do it with the lines really close together. And that way it sort of makes a very cool texture. And with many tangles, you can kind of modify the way you draw them to create a different illusion. So let's zoom in a little bit here. And I'm going to work in this space here with my brown pen. And I'm just going to start off by putting kind of, I always say, like a constellation of dots. And you can always add more later. They don't have to be perfectly spaced apart. And I'm just going to connect 2 of them. And once you have a line there, you're going to want to find another dot that's sort of floating about here. And I'm going to start on that dot, and I'm going to travel down to one side of the line. And then because this is a texturing tangle, I'm really focusing on my lines being as close together as I can. Always starting on the dot, traveling down to the line, remembering to breathe. And that's it. So that's your basic form for Munchen. And then to continue on, you use the side as your new landing strip. You find a dot that's outside over there, and then you repeat the same routine that we just did. Again, we're kind of trying to focus on them being a little closer together this time to create a little bit of a different look with this Munchen, to get that really fine line look, because I want to really sort of illuminate the idea of these tangles being textural. I guess I use a texture like sort of these close line tangles. Okay, I'm just finishing up my Munchen here, and as you can see, I really wanted to work it all the way to the edges to like really have it fill that template. So you kind of on the edge ones have to imagine where that Munchen might go if it were stretching beyond those parameters. And Munchen's a great tangle because I could have drawn these with the lines further apart and gotten a very different result. So if you're new to this tangle, you might explore that. So the next tangle I'm going to show you is called Senna. And Senna is one of those tangles that many people have a little bit of trouble with in the beginning, and they have to play with it a lot. So if you're new to Senna, you might want to try it somewhere else a couple of times before you try it on here. Or if you like to just kind of go for it, then I encourage you to follow along. Whatever you end up with will be interesting and fun. And I always say that with a lot of the tangles is, even if it doesn't look exactly like mine, it'll probably look like something pretty cool. So, to start off Senna, we're going to start with sort of like a little S shape or reverse S shape, whatever is easier for you. So this, I'm just doing kind of an S shape here in the center. And then at the top of my S shape, I'm just going to add a little sort of weighting or a little sort of oval shape on the end there. Then I'm going to turn my tile here. And I'm going to begin to go around this sort of a weighted area. And it's all about the aura. And again, we're working these tangles that have really fine line work. So I'm kind of going at this, just curling around and finding a place to land and just sort of responding to the previously drawn line. So the trick with Senna is that you kind of have to go with it for a little while, and then you might make a choice to sort of, like here, I think I'm going to not start all the way over, and I think I'm going to start coming down from halfway down for a little bit. And this one seemed like I went a little too wide, so I'm going to go back to fill that space. I'm going to turn my tile, and I think I'm going to go back now, and I'm going to start working my way back around this line. Again, these nice fine lines, and they're changing a little bit as I go. I actually have no idea where the name Senna came from. This might be one that Martha named. So this is a place where I'm going to kind of work from the middle of this line for a little bit to fill this space. So Senna is one of those tangles that once you get used to it, you learn that you're just using that beginning S shape as a starting point, but you really just want to inspire sort of different spin-offs and funky layers. So now I'm going around to the other side of that line. There's no wrong or right here. In fact, I think it's kind of cool when you start to get like things like that. And if you find your lines going too wide, you can add one. You know, for instance, right here, I might go from the same place for a minute and veer off to so now I have like a weird space left, and I have some decisions. I could go this way, or I could go back to that original line and kind of fill it. And I think that's what I'm going to do. So that's Senna, and you're going to start playing with this and finding all different funky things to do and different ways to fill it. And it's just sort of this fun textural thing, and the S shape just sort of binds these lines together and creates different folds and layers. Next one I'm going to show you is an old tangle that I don't see very often, and so I was like, I think I'm going to do this one, and it's a very good texturing tangle. And this tangle is called Stir It Up, like a little Bob Marley, right? A little Stir It Up. Or is that Steer It Up? Stir It Up? I don't know. Anyway, this tangle goes like this. So this is one of those ones that might be good to have some extra coffee because we're going to do a little shake. So again, no real rhyme or reason, but I'm really kind of just doing some line work. And I'm kind of going in little spirals and back and forth. And if I get stuck in the middle, you can start a new one and circle around, but you kind of want to fill every space. So I'm doing these little shaky lines, but combination of, you can do a couple little spirals, but then add in some some back and forths. And the trick is to keep that consistency with the distance between all these little shaky lines. And you get this really cool, I don't know, does it look like fingerprints, or maybe not, because the shakiness adds a really neat texture to it. It's like the surface of a sponge, maybe. So that is Stir It Up. It's really beautiful, actually. One of those kind of tangles you don't see very often, but I love the way it looks. It's a great texture. All right, so we got 2 more spaces here. The next one I'm going to do for you guys is called Kikko, and Kikko is a texture you see sometimes on manhole covers or in tiles, maybe in metal where they need to create some sort of grip. That's where I see it a lot. And it's kind of a tangle where you can kind of give yourself a little bit of a waltzing mantra. So Kikko goes like this. You can do it in 3s or 4s, and I'm going to do it in 4s. And I'm going to kind of do it along the curve here. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. This takes a little bit of I think maybe time or patience to figure out the pacing of where your lines are going to fall. But I've done this tangle a million times, and it doesn't really matter if you end up with like 3 in some and 4 in the other. It doesn't really matter. But my my trick is that I sort of draw the first one and then sort of try to get my spacing for how much distance between each one. And they can kind of morph, and once you have the first row down, you can have a little bit easier to see where they're going to go. So on the next row, I'm going to want to do the opposite. So for instance, under the vertical ones here, I'm going to make them go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can see I put a little curve in mine. You could do yours straight. It just gives it a different look. All right, so they don't have to be perfect, and I think sometimes actually a little bit of wonkiness, it makes them a little bit more interesting. So with Kikko, you get this kind of cool weaving effect. It's kind of fun. And you can play around with your lines, maybe you do 5 lines and they're really close together, maybe you pull them apart, whatever works better for you, but it's just finding that rhythm of going with the same amount of lines going in one direction and then the other, and back and forth and back and forth. All right, my last texturing tangle I'm going to show for you guys is a tangle called Shattuck. And Shattuck is actually my middle name. It's my given name, Molly Shattuck. It was my great-grandmother's last name, I think. They wanted me to name her after her, and her name was Beulah, and she hated her name, and so they had to change it to Shattuck because, well, this is the story I got anyway, because she didn't want somebody else to have the name Beulah. But if your name is Beulah out there, I think it's actually a beautiful name, so I sort of think I could have been Molly Beulah. Could have been my name. Anyway, here's Shattuck. So I'm going to draw 2 Shattocks here, and I'm gonna divide it in half, and I think I'm gonna do a really fine little line in between like that, just to make it a little more interesting. So I'm gonna focus on just one side to start, and Shattuck, when I'm starting in a little nook here, I'm going to start by drawing a series of diagonal lines from the top, just to get started, probably about that far. Then I'm going to turn my tile, and I'm going to draw a series of diagonal lines going in the perpendicular to the first one. So, and I'm just going to go until I get to the bottom of the one I already did. People draw Shattuck different ways. This is how I do it. I think it fills better. So again, I'm going to work this area perpendicular. Just until I get to the other side. And again, since we're trying to focus on some of these fine line tangles, I'm doing this one particularly close together. You could do Shattuck a little different to get a different look. And you can add a little curve to your Shattuck if you want to get a little more of that bamboo look. And now I'm going to do the other side. And I'm going to start the other side from this side, this point. So we'll have a little fun mirroring. Again, perpendicular. You can add a little curve to it if you want. All right, fun. It ended up being a little more of a weave, which I like that too. So these are all my texturing tangles for one side. And like I said, I'm just showing you one side today, and I'm going to have you guys fill yours, and I'll show you a finished one later. So picking all of these parts to put my texturing tangle, and then I also use the brown for the texturing ones, and I'm going to use the black for the drama tangles. Okay, so now we're going to switch gears, and we are going to work on these contrasting tangles to the texture ones called drama tangles. And drama tangles are your tangles that have a lot of ink in them and a lot of white space. So they sort of pop out on the page, and they will complement any of these more textured tangles or fine line tangles. And it's nice to have both because they kind of will allow each other to pop off the page a little bit more. So probably your most basic drama tangle would be Knightsbridge, where you have 50% black inky space and then 50% white. And Knightsbridge is a basic checkerboard. I'm not going to demo that one today because it's a more basic tangle, but it would be a good one for you to add on the other side of this template. So I'm going to show you first a tangle which I love, it's sort of a tangulation of Hollabaugh, but it has a very specific look to it. And this is a tangle called Umble. All of these tangles I'm going to be working with have a lot of ink and take a little bit more time, so we're probably going to jump through it. You're going to have to pause your video, like you probably already have, and catch up later, and then restart your video. So Umble is a series of bands like Hollabaugh, and I'm going to play with this space right here to do my Umble. Let's zoom in a little bit. And Umble is a series of bands that are inked in. I love taking my time with getting a real black space, but everybody has their own approach to And then I'm going to aura each side. Nice and slow, focus. And that's your basic Umble band, but we're going to be putting them in a certain scenario. So your first Umble band you want to put, you can follow along, you can just pause for a minute, but we're going to hook them all on these little little points right here. So I'm going to do another one right here. And then a third one over here. All right, so once you have your three sort of beginning Umble shapes here that sort of curve these points, if you had a four-sided shape, you could put a fourth one. The next series is to put another one here that sort of goes in between here. So I'm going to put one that falls more on the points. And Umble is really just a series of these sort of arcing lines that weave their way back and forth. All right, now I'm going to do one, I think coming right here. Let's see. Always falling behind. So as you can see, we're starting to get this effect of these hooks kind of going in different directions, back and forth. And I'm going to do one that comes arcing in from the top here. And it's these little auras that I think create a cool illusion. And now we're going to keep going back and forth. I'm going to create another one behind these over here that sort of mimics that same original arc. Now it's behind. When it starts to get filled, I kind of just go back and forth, seeing where I can kind of put more in. I like to leave this middle space a little bit open. So I'm kind of imagining if there was a couple more of these arcs that went behind, maybe on this side. All right, I think that's good for Umble. It has this really cool kind of centering in, and I don't know, I've always found that tangle to be pretty cool. So I might even play around with it later today because I got some ideas now. That's what happens when you do these tangles that you haven't done for a while. You all of a sudden like be like, oh, I need to explore this one a little bit more. I need to play with this one a little bit more. All right. The next drama tangle I'm going to show you guys is striping. And this is something we don't do with a lot of tangles, but I'm going to do it with my striping because I like the way it looks this way, is where the string is actually part of the tangle. So I'm going to create a little mini string in here that's really loopy, and then I'm going to fill it with my striping. So I have my pencil in my hand here, and I'm going to create a bunch of loops and divide it up maybe a little bit. So I have some spaces that are all a little bit different here. I don't want any too big or too small, something like that. Totally random, you can ignore them. or use them. So striping's exactly what it is. There's no secrets here with the name of this tangle. Basically, what we're going to do is start with one of your spaces. And when I do striping, I really like to make my stripes a little bit curvy. So just filling that one space with stripes going all in the same direction. Nice chunky stripes, not too thin because you want to get that idea of the large bands of ink. All right, and then you want to pick a space sort of adjacent to it, and you want to try to put the stripes going in a different direction. Just taking your time. Remember to breathe. And then we're just going to go ahead and fill all of these little spaces with stripes going in all different directions. All right, so just filling in this last place here. As you can see, striping is kind of a fun one, and you can go this way and that, and there's no really rhyme or reason on the right way to do it. You just want to probably analyze each space and make sure your stripes are kind of going in different directions, and you'll get the most out of the look of this tangle. It's a fun one. Takes a little time to fill in. All these drama tangles are a lot of fill-in work, so if you need to rest in between, that's totally fine. I mean, rest your hands, obviously. All right, and it looks really cool when it's all shaded. All right, next up we have a tangle called Cubine. This is a grid tangle, but it adds a nice drama to it because there's a bit of fill-in work. So we're just going to create a quick grid here. I'm going to do a bunch of, doesn't have to be exact. You can do yours different than mine if you want. Just want to break it up into squares. Okay. And then once you have your grid of squares, you're going to put, we're just going to focus on one square. We're going to put a diagonal line through the center. And then we're going to make a little box in one corner like so. And ink that in. Just a basic fragment. And then we're going to go ahead and do exactly the same thing in all of our boxes. Okay, so I have all my cubines filled in. It's looking pretty cool already, but it's definitely one of those tangles that looks great when you have it all shaded up. I love that one. It's a great drama tangle. All right, next up we have Jetties. Jetties is a fun one too, and Jetty has a funny legend story, but I don't know if I'm allowed to tell it because it's a little bit silly, so maybe someday that'll be the mystery to be. So anyway, jetties are these big orbs And they can be a little wonky. They don't have to be perfect. And inside these orbs, we're going to create a stripe, sort of like our Umble stripe, maybe a little thinner. And I definitely like to make this stripe have a little curve to it. And so basically we're kind of looking for a cue ball sort of illusion, like if you were to look at a cue ball from a game of pool. And then a little aura on each side, just like the Umble. But you have it in these kind of big orbs. And then I'm going to draw another big orb, maybe this one falling behind, and then you just want that stripe to go in a different direction. So it's kind of these like a bunch of balls layering in between each other with this cool stripe. So Jetties, you can really play around with kind of jumbling all these balls together, and by putting the stripes in different directions, you kind of get this really fun effect. Great drama, Tangle. Okay, last space here. And I am working with actually one of my favorite tangles for the last one, and this tangle is called Jonkle. If anybody sees my work, I use Jonkle quite a bit. I don't know what it is about it. I like it a lot. So actually, I think I'll start this way. And I'm going to put my Jonkle in here sort of fanning out. So I'm going to start from this point, and I'm going to divide it in half first with my pen. And then I think I'll divide these two halves in half, so I have 4 spaces. Okay. And Jonkle is stripes, but sort of in a V pattern or a zigzag. And so I think I'll start in the center with a series of V's. So put a V shape here, and then I'll aura that nice and slow all the way up. I want them to be sort of spaced evenly, but don't have to be perfect. And then I'm going to want these 2 outside ones to create a zigzag going in the other direction. So I might start in the center here to make it make sense. And then these just parallel down. All right, so you have something like that, and you might like the way that looks. It's totally cool just like that. But I am going to ink it in every other stripe, and then do it every other on each row. Show you what I mean. So once you have one row filled in with every other stripe filled in, I'm going to work either side, and I'm going to make sure I do the opposite on this side. So pay close attention when you first start. Once you got the first one done, it's a little easier. And you'll do every other. All right, there we go. And that is Jonkle, which is a really funny tangle because it's spelled Jonqal, which I think is like against English, but my mom said it's okay as far as tangles go. But anyway, that's my favorite tangle. Love all of these, and I love the way they look sort of together, but they look a lot better shaded. So let's add some graphite. And I think I'll go ahead just in the order that we did them. So Munchen can be shaded so many different ways. And I think what I'll do is just really play with, if you look at these little triangular shapes, I'm going to just put a shadow right at the bottom of each one. And then I think I'm going to shadow all around the edges just of the whole shape here at the end. What I mean by that is add a shadow around the edge just to give it a little definition too. Remember, little goes a long way with graphite. It's nice to add emphasis, but you always want to leave white space. So make sure you're paying attention to leaving white space. All right, there's Munchen all shaded up. Go to our Senna. With Senna, I like to just sort of shade the original sort of S shape on both sides, and then some other areas might be calling to you, but kind of create a shadow there. And then around all the edges too. All right, there's our Senna coming to life. I do think the shading adds a lot to this tangle. You can always go back a little bit in afterwards. Love that. All right, we're gonna do our stir it up. This one, I think I'm just gonna go around the edges here and kind of define the edges and then keep it pretty basic here. Using the side of my pencil if you're new to shading, puts a nice soft line down instead of using the point. Oh, that looks great. With these texturing tangles, the shading is really nice. Even just basic shading adds really cool effect to it. Nice. All right, with Kikko, I think I'm going to do a similar thing. I think I'm just going to play with the edges here. any of these tangles, you can explore other shading techniques, but I think in this sort of scenario, that works just well enough. With Shattuck, I'm going to do these outside edges, but then I'm going to play with some of these layers too, I think. And then I'm just going to put a little shadow under each one of these little, almost where they seem to overlap. Just taking the tortillon to kind of soften those shadows. Remember to leave the white space. All right, we got all our texturing tangles shaded. Now let's go at the drama tangles. And we start with striping, which I think really comes to life when you shade it. So basically what we're gonna do is just shade sort of the shape itself on the outsides. So these little shapes that we have. And then you wanna take your tortillon and just fade that a little bit. So that's basically what we can see what just one shape looks like. Just kind of fun. And then we're gonna go around and do them to all of them. All right, so there's my striping all done up. I love this tangle. Okay. And then I actually think with Cubine, I'm going to do a little bit of a different approach. It's kind of a fun one. Pretty simple, but it has a nice effect. I'm going to isolate one of my squares right here, and I'm actually just going to color in that whole square with the pencil. Get a little shade with a tortillon, and then I'm going to do that to all of them. So it's kind of a different shading approach, but it gives you a very cool illusion. I love that. And moving on to our joncle, I am going to, let's see here. You can shade joncle so many different ways. I think I'm going to look at this V and I'm going to shade just one side, this sort of V shape here. I'm just going to shade the whites on one side there. Take my tortillon and sort of fade it down that line. And I'm going to do that over here. I'm going to skip this one so that I have the V's kind of going the same way and do the same exact thing. Kind of a bunch of ways you can shade joncle to create different illusions. Use that. That's kind of neat. I think I'm going to stick with that. And then with the jetties, I'll just sort of play with where these overlap a little bit. Create a little bit of shadow. Do that all the way around. And one more, we have Umble. And I think, again, I'm just going to play with a little bit of this fun overlapping, kind of locating those first ones I drew, allowing those to rise up. Umble's a fun one to sort of play with the layering. Use our tortillon for those finishing touches. I like to leave this white space in the middle. Can zoom out on some of these. Oh, yay. So fun. All right, so we have all of our tangles here. And what I did on mine, and you could do the same, is on this side I did all of the texturing tangles on the inside and the drama tangles on the outside. Had this nice contrast. And then on this side I did the opposite. So I did the drama tangles here, and I can show you this finished one I have. It's a little bit different. I have a different combination of tangles here. And as you can see, I have my texturing tangles out here and then in here, and I'm all ready to play and use this. And on this one, I actually had a little fun, and I put a little Mod Podge on here because I thought it would be kind of fun. So mine has a little bit of a finish on here. Loving this legend project. I hope you had fun with drama and texturing tangles or fine line tangles. And we'll see you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.